In today's society, the movie industry is one of the most critical parts of the world of entertainment. In the past several decades, there have been many franchises that have made names for themselves, in both the box office and in popular culture. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and James Bond are just some of the most notable examples. However, there is a new franchise that has emerged in today's movie industry, and it has demonstrated the potential to surpass all those previously mentioned. This is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Many of us have probably seen Iron Man or Captain America or the Avengers, but there are some who may not know what roles these movies play in the grand scheme of things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the MCU. So what exactly is the MCU? In the simplest of terms, it is one large connected universe of heroes, villains, and other characters throughout several feature film franchises. It is an attempt to recreate what the comics had originally done, create multiple characters with multiple stories that could stand alone at first, but then all slowly come together and create one big plot line, incorporating the events of all the other plots. Without the right to some of Marvel's most popular franchises, such as Spider-Man, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four, some people had doubts of the success of the MCU. However, Marvel Studios was able to make the most out of what it had, as it reintroduced the world to many characters from the comics that had not been portrayed as much on the big screen. The concept of the MCU may sound a little confusing at first. However, looking in depth at each of the movies in the MCU individually will help make more sense of things. There are many connections between these movies that could be missed at first glance, but the way Marvel has tied these movies together into one big story is nothing short of brilliant.
Truth is, I am Iron Man.
With these four words, Tony Stark laid the foundation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The goal in making Iron Man was to prove that Marvel, which was at the time a small independent studio, could create a major box office hit without being backed by a larger, more recognizable studio, such as Paramount Pictures or 20th Century Fox. It additionally served to kickstart the MCU, as Tony Stark would be an ideal character to introduce the concept of it to moviegoers. Iron Man also introduced several of the techniques that Marvel Studios would use in their movies, namely the use of recurring characters and post-credit scenes. Nick Fury and Agent Phil Coulson, who would reappear in many future movies, were introduced in Iron Man. The famous Marvel post-credit scenes also made their debut at the very end of the movie.
Jarvis!
Welcome home, son.
I am Iron Man. You think you're the only superhero in the world? Mr. Stark, you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
Who the hell are you?
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
Though less successful in the box office than Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk still served an important purpose in the MCU. In the post-credits scenes in the movie, an important cameo was made by Iron Man himself. This was the first appearance of a character from a different franchise in an MCU movie, and it also revealed to the audience that the plots of all the movies were loosely connected.
Smell of stale beer and defeat. You know, I hate to say I told you so, General, but that super soldier program was put on ice for a reason. I've always felt that hardware was much more reliable. Stark. General. You always wear such nice suits. Touche. I hear you have an unusual problem. You should talk.
Thor allowed the MCU to take their movies to the cosmic level that was originally present in the comics, namely Thor's homeworld of Asgard. In Thor, many of the methods in the MCU were used yet again. Hawkeye made his debut in the MCU, and Agent Coulson returned again as a recurring character. Additionally, in the movie, we are introduced to two very significant parts of the plot in a future MCU movie, the villainous Loki and the powerful item known as the Tesseract.
Legend tells us one thing, history another. But every now and then we find something that belongs to both.
What is it?
Power, Doctor. If we can figure out how to tap it, maybe unlimited power.
Well, I guess that's worth a look. Well, I guess that's worth a look.
Captain America, the first Avenger, was slightly different from the previous movies in the MCU. This is mainly because it took place in the past, the World War II era to be exact. Therefore, it could not directly link to the plots of the previous movies, which had taken place in the present time. It primarily served to introduce the character of Captain America to audiences. However, the ending of the movie, which actually does take place in the present, directly leads into the beginning of Marvel's next movie, The Avengers.
Trouble sleeping?
You here with a mission, sir?
I am.
Trying to get me back in the world?
Trying to save it.
The Avengers was the culmination of the previous 5 movies in the MCU. This was Marvel's finest production yet, and it excelled tremendously in the box office. It grossed over $1.5 billion, and to this date, only Avatar and Titanic have grossed more. The Avengers serve two main purposes: recreating the comics of the same name that were loved by many as a film, and tying together all the plots of the previous films in the MCU. Recurring characters that had smaller roles in the past played bigger parts in the Avengers, and Loki also made his return as the main villain. The combination of plot elements from all the prior movies contributed to the immense success, and it solidified Marvel's reputation as a prestigious movie studio. The Avengers marked the end of Phase 1, the first chapter of the MCU. However, there was still plenty to come in the future of Marvel. Iron Man 3 marked the beginning of Phase 2 in the MCU. The purpose of the films in Phase 2 were to reconnect the plot lines of the previous films in their respective franchises while following up the events that took place in the Avengers. The challenge in creating Phase 2 was returning back to the individual worlds of each superhero after experiencing a film like The Avengers, which combined the worlds of many heroes. To combat this, Marvel chose to take a deeper look into each of the characters in these new movies. This tactic would allow the audiences to remain engaged in the movies even after watching a film as exciting as The Avengers. In Iron Man 3, we see Tony Stark struggling to recover from the trauma he experienced in The Avengers, and we witness a weaker side of him which we had not seen in the previous movies. In Thor: The Dark World, Thor is forced to ask his brother Loki for help in defeating his newest enemies, despite all the turmoil that Loki had caused in The Avengers. In Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Steve Rogers is unsure if he should trust S.H.I.E.L.D., the organization that he worked with in The Avengers. These examples demonstrate the connections that these movies make back to The Avengers. Marvel Studios has recently revealed a timeline of Phase 3 in the MCU, and it has already garnered plenty of excitement. Nothing is certain yet, but the events in these movies will likely be based off the plot of The Avengers: Age of Ultron. There will be additions to the existing franchises, such as Captain America: Civil War and Thor: Ragnarok, along with brand new movies such as Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, and Black Panther. These films will be intricately connected to each other and will all build up to the culmination of the MCU franchise. By looking more in depth into the movies that currently make up the MCU, we have seen many different connections between the movies that may have been missed before. Marvel Studios used many creative methods and techniques to tie these movies together and leave its audiences anxiously anticipating the next movies. The use of cameos, recurring characters and objects, and post-credit scenes allowed viewers to not only become immersed in the world of just Iron Man or Thor, but rather the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.